Well, we may as well start, huh, Kenny? What a guest we got here. Well, I follow him all the time. I follow his carnivore eating. I love the way he lives. Even your career, but there's this bit of you didn't even know this, but Jan helped my daughter.
Yeah.
And amazing woman. But we can get into your mum and how much she does, not just for rugby league, in terms of the welfare of the players, but just how I was amazed when she came to my house. I was amazed about just how she can pinpoint the problem.
Yeah.
And tell you, if you go down this road, what's going to happen to you. But you've had an interesting career, and I just want to thank Jake for bringing you on because...
Yeah, likewise.
Just recently on Gladiator, just you're huge on there. But I guess where we'd like to start is we'll get into the early years of your rugby league career because you've had somewhat of an indifferent past. I'm not going to say checkered, I don't think that's right. Indifferent past.
It's been a roller coaster.
It's been a roller coaster. and what I love about you, Sandor, is that you're open and honest about, your experiences. And one thing we like to do on this podcast is share ideas and help people, doesn't matter what level they're at or what's happened in their career, on how they can overcome challenges and go to that next level.
I love that.
So tell us a little bit about your early years and where you started. Obviously, you started at the Roosters. You grew up in the eastern suburbs.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, well, a couple of things I could pinpoint. Firstly, reflecting on mum. Like, I started playing footy when I was 3 years old. Mum was my first coach for the first 3 years.
Wow.
So, I think she still loves footy more than I do, So, I didn't know my dad, but she certainly made up for that. She pushed me, but it was with love, She always instilled so much self-belief. And one thing on mum, it's probably taken me 35 years to really anchor in and respect and be grateful for all that she's done. I think we take that for granted, but even she's mad. She's got no filter. We said that she's authentic, she's raw, but I now know, everything I am her. And it's probably taken so long for me to realize that, but it's good things and some things that are work-ons, whether it's I know she makes a lot of sacrifices. She people pleases. She struggles to say no. She puts others first. I've taken on those traits as well, something I've had to work on. But on the other side, no one works harder. She understands people. She relates to people. She's got a voice, and that voice puts her in situations like the one that you experience and enables her to help people, enables her to have an impact on people. So all these things I've taken from my mum, and it started at that young age. I always wanted to be a footy player, but without her pushing me, believing in me, there's probably no chance I would have gone on that trajectory. And yeah, like you said, I grew up in Woolloomooloo, not when it was how it was now. It wasn't fancy. We grew up in Housing Commission. And I always have this one reflection, and you could probably connect on this having kids. Jake, you got kids yet?
No, not yet, mate.
But you sure?
Not that I know of.
Not that he knows of. At 7 years old, this is just one thing that I always connect to when someone asks about childhood. At 7 years old, I would catch a bus, train and bus. I'd walk to King's Cross and catch the bus, train, bus to school in year 1 and 2. Imagine that now, a 7-year-old kid. So, it was a very different life, but I was also very independent. I think I had to think for myself, fend for myself. So, I have identified things that holds me back in my adult age. But at the end of the day, that's given me so many great qualities, and coming from a little bit of adversity and humble beginnings has really made me who I am. So my trajectory in life was just a love and passion for sports. Mum didn't drive, so we caught every single bus and train, every number you can think of around Sydney to take me to every single sport. And, eventually footy got serious, and I was at boarding school, then left, tore my ACL at 17, and then ended up at Matraville Sports High. We just had this gun team of Sydney's and Roosters and the South players, and then entered my way in the system and sort of got my start and debut with the Roosters.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was the best start to a podcast I've ever heard.
I know,
that's just pretty much answered the first 3 or 4 questions that I had for you, because I find it most interesting when we have people on. How were you when you were a young fella and going through your teenage years? And mate, if we can harp on that a little bit more, just I found so interesting, because I used to catch, as an example, same thing, not everywhere, but buses to schools and all that sort of stuff. There's just stuff that you can't really do too much of now. So
Yeah.
how did you get that sort of self-dependence? Have you always had that?
I think I was forced into it in some respects. Like it's all that I knew.
Yep.
But now looking back, I know that you've done some good work too, Jakey, in terms of like looking back at past experiences and seeing how that's impacted who you are now.
Yep.
And I just look back on some of those things, and it's just all that I knew. There's other moments that I remember, like I would go out to Campbelltown at school. So I'd be up at 5 a.m. I'd go to school. I'd play sport after, doing my training, and then I'd go to boxing at Johnny Lewis's gym, Johnny Lewis at in Sydney Uni, and I'd walk up the hill so tired at like 8 p.m. and Mum would meet me at the top, grab my bag, and then walk me the next 100 meters at home. Like that was my life at 11 or 12. So it's kind of no wonder that I have been able to lean on just work ethic and drive and pushing maybe a little bit further than people are willing to push. And I feel like there's been times where that's got me by. You know, I'm not the most skilled or talented person, but I feel like there's been times where that's certainly given me the edge over someone or gotten me to that next step.
You know, it's funny. We were talking today with Jake. You know how you said there's a lot of self-reflection and you know, when I look at rugby league, you know, I'm around a lot of rugby league players and managers. There seems to be like, you know, you're holding on to these things and the cultures that rugby league, you know, it's instilled in rugby league and it's been there forever.
Of course.
You know, whether it's, you know, the drinking and
Yep.
you know, player managers pulling you here, pulling you there, you know, getting into trouble off the field, you know, you're single parent, you know, going, where's my dad? There's like subconsciously, there's things that get us at different points. And I find that with rugby league players, it's magnified. Like when you're going to these sessions and you're walking up to Johnny Lewis's, you know, it's 8 p.m. There's no free time to become something outside of this system.
Yeah.
Do you see, like, obviously, I you know, I've been with Jake for a while now, and you know, I see a lot of different players. We had Adam Fanor Blake here. Is there a lot of these different issues that players have and react to that they normally going, hey, what happened there?
Yeah.
How do you see that a lot in players and yourself?
Of course, but it's pretty simple algorithm. Like there's just a lack of education and mentoring. And by education, I don't mean like someone come in and let's get the boys some certificates, get them a career path. I mean from the age of 14, you're in the bubble and everything is football. Your mentors are football coaches. You have very little exposure to the adversities of real life. And it's all encompassing. Like you're trying to be the best football player that you can. So there's a very little exposure to life experience. Traveling is a cheat code in life, as we know, because it exposes you to so many things.
Yes.
The adversities they face are either internally in a football club or through injuries. So in terms of their maturity in life, it's very low. And that's not a knock on any football player. These are great people who have, even when they transition, they've got all the assets. A football player, a professional athlete, would be an employer's dream. Like they got all the skills, all the assets. They got integrity. You can trust them. They're loyal. They're hardworking. They're a great teammate. But they don't have passions. They don't have interests because they haven't had exposure. And they haven't had mentoring. Like it is what it is. You touched on the rugby league culture again. It's not really a negative, but these conversations for the best part of 90% of my career would have been like weird and, you know, these things can't be spoken about, and you would have been the odd one out. And, you know, it's a shame, but that is the culture. It's still very old school in so many ways. So, I mean, it's definitely, there's a transition in life in general, for the general public, but you'd love to see that move more into the rugby league space and it not be so reactive. We don't have to be having these conversations just when someone's going through hard times. Like, let's expose the boys to ideas and how they can be a better person, how they can explore different ideologies and find their passion. Those are the things that I think would benefit a football player the most.
And to add to that, just my own personal experience, like as we spoke about this morning, when I was 17, you know, I got everything I ever asked for, everything. But I had literally no life tools. Yeah. So I was doing my best with like the 4 cards I got dealt, right? That's why I'm very humbled, obviously now the position I'm in and the decade of hard lessons and really, really good adventures that I went on. But even just to have that sort of skill set, I suppose forced upon some of these younger men and women now because of the female sport and the side of it. We've almost got to I think, because we all come from different backgrounds. You've just shared some of yours. I'm obviously pretty open with mine. You and I have spoken about yours. And even when we speak around other people, a high percentage of players are coming from chaos.
Yeah.
And then we go, have contracts, hang around grown men on hundreds of thousands of dollars, but be good.
Yeah.
And be normal.
Yeah.
And what is normal?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
it's great that we can sit here and actually have a conversation around that, because I think it's empowering.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you know, I'm starting to see it now just being around certain rugby league players. The curiosity is there. As we
I
spoke
agree.
down when we were walking down,
I agree.
information is key. And that's for everything. And it took me till, 4 or 5 years ago to fully lean into wanting to gather information. You know, as you said before, I wasn't responsive to wanting to learn. It was, that's not me. Where, now it is me. And now I want a little bit more of that as well.
Yeah, and it's just being exposure and building self-awareness. Curiosity is where it starts,
Massive.
but how do you give this gift and impart this knowledge on a footy player who only knows so much, you know what I mean, from just being consumed by that environment and trying to be the best that they possibly can be. I mean, my greatest lessons have come through my hardest times. That's just facts. And we know that's true. Doesn't mean I'm chasing failure and adversity, but I know that's where it comes from. I know that's where my greatest lessons, my biggest personal growth, the best solutions I've found in my life. So when we take that away and it's only focused on football, as you said, these are the cards that they've been dealt. So I think it starts with conversation. I think it starts with more and more people in that space who are glorified or put on a pedestal to be vulnerable and start having those conversations. But yeah, I agree. There is a movement happening and it's only going to lead to good things.
2009, when you're at the Chooks, and this is what I want to go through and how you overcame these challenges, right? 2009, you have an altercation. I believe it was 2009 or 2010. No, 2009 with Jake.
2009.
Yeah, and in rugby league, because I played it myself.
Yeah.
You're taught to back, especially I'm 48 this year, so it's like, hey, if it's one in, it's all in, right? So you're taught to be this warrior.
Yeah.
And same on the field. Hey, this is what we're doing. We're gonna knock these guys out. Like, it's almost like you're trained mentally that you got to be this warrior. Then you have this altercation, which kind of ends your career at the Chooks. Talk us through that. What happened there, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, a lot. It was a crazy time. So firstly, we were in the under-20s comp, which was a crazy period. Nearly every second player was playing first grade, so it was just like the Wild West for a little bit there. I got an opportunity. The Roosters weren't going well, but I got an opportunity to debut, which was really cool. Played a few games, and then obviously at 18, 19, when you debut, you're thinking like, all right, I'm set here. I'm going to have my contract. I'm sorted. So that happened, that altercation after my debut, mind you, which was like the worst possible timing. Now, everything was fine. I got acquitted and I wasn't nothing ended up happening, but still any publicity is good publicity wasn't the case in that respect, because it was all negative. And we get to sort of the end of the year and it's like, oh, look, we don't have a contract for you next year. So I was like, holy shit, like right at the end of the year. So I was left by myself, had no club. I was searching, of course, with my manager, putting the feelers out as much as possible. Pretty much till the end of December, that would have been September, October, pretty much till the end of December, I was just completely gobsmacked the fact that I was in this position with a fresh start, debuted as a teenager and had no club, no opportunity. I reached out to Freddie Fittler, who was the coach at the time, which was really cool. He was my idol growing up, so that was a really cool moment that I'll always never forget. But he basically called me one day and he said, hey, Matty Elliott from the Panthers is willing to have a catch-up. So I was like, hell yeah, like I'll take anything. So I drove out to Penrith, and to be honest, I'd probably only been there once, like Penrith, Windsor. I'd never been out there. So I drove out there, and I'll never forget, these are the moments that are really defining, and I explained on that roller coaster that I just always remember, because they're those key milestones where you had to respond and do something. And I remember he was sitting there in his office. He had a whiteboard with, they have all the little magnets with the names, and he had 11 names up there. And he said, these are all the players that are in front of you. You play better than them and we'll give you a shot. So the next week, he's like, you can go start at Windsor, see how you go. So I went out. I know Windsor now, but at the time, this was past Windsor on a cow paddock. Like, there were no goalposts. And I was come from the Roosters. I was living in Manly at the time. I was like,
Culture shock.
Oh shit! Here we go. But at that moment, I knew when he said that, there was another moment that this happened. And Jake, you'll be able to connect to this. I was 16 in a room with Peter O'Sullivan, and bro, we had like the Kiwis that had come over, the Queenslanders on 60 grand.
Yep.
And he said, like, maybe one of you will make it in this room. And I remember just going like, fuck you, that's going to be me. And it wasn't me. He was not talking to me. But that was and it was the same moment here. I was like, all right, fucking let's go. I'll do this. So started playing reserve grade. Couple games in, after having a few really good games, I signed a first grade contract. And then by round 17, Mickey Gordon ended up playing for Origin. And then I got a start. And then we ended up having to run to the semi-finals. So literally, you know, I was doing preseason by myself, training by myself, got a start in January, and then that's how it ended up by June of that next year. So just a really cool moment and something that I'm proud of. I say this a lot, like I've got a lot of shitty tattoos, a lot of shitty, you know, my party time watch and all the rest of them. But one of them is I'm not what I've done, I'm what I've overcome. And I'm just proud of those things that I've overcome, because I've been around many good people with some amazing stories and plenty of accolades, but at some point you have to be proud and grateful for the shit that you've overcome, because it's not so much a comparison like could other people have overcome this, but like I'm proud to have overcome those moments, and every time I have, something great has come after it. And that lesson alone has allowed me in my adult life to not fear failure as much, because what's the outcome? I grow, learn, or I fucking win, you know?
Yeah.
And
Love it.
those stories, right, they're the ones people don't hear. A phone call to Freddie, who then gets it. You know what I mean? Like, even the business side of rugby league, it has the ability and does destroy things for people. But like those little moments where people, you know, I don't know if you've shared that before, but that makes you love rugby league, because even though there's some people in there that don't necessarily all the time want to see you do too well, the ones that do want you to do well, as you said, you rock up and you're like, I'm fucking going here because this only happened a week ago for me. So it's a bit of a godsend, and you turn up and you have even more of a crack. And as you said before, you grow. Footy player, person, you know, discipline, all those things that wrapped in your life that you might not have tapped into yet, that skyrocket just. Unreal.
You talk about, obviously, your time at Penrith, and this is why I like it when you talk about the challenges that you've overcome and how you're growing. And you can tell by the way you talk and how you hold yourself, you know, you got enormous potential. But you already had great potential in rugby league, and that's why probably Melbourne called you from Thailand. But there was an instance in Canberra that, you know, pretty much almost ended your career unless you got that call from Melbourne.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through how that challenge, how you overcame that challenge? But in those instances as well, because your mum's a freak, mate.
Yeah.
What were the conversations like at Canberra when, you know, you got suspended for 4 years? What was that?
Yeah,
What
mate,
that
it was
like?
such a crazy time. Like if you think about now, just the word peptide alone, like back then it was like, oh my God, this forbidden word. Like now it's laughable.
I
The
know.
word peptide is laughable. Like I'll have a conversation with anyone, but back then it was crazy, you know? So it was this huge saga. What happened in Penrith at the end of that year that I was talking about, we had this great run to the semi-finals and I was playing some good footy. My shoulders were just busted. And this is I don't mind talking about it, but I went to the club doctor and I had my two scans, and he was like, mate, you need a shoulder reconstruction, both torn labrums. And I basically said to him, mate, I can't do it. I need to get another contract. So let's just leave him. And he didn't say anything. He didn't tell anyone. The club doctor, he didn't. So I was like, this is amazing. So anyway, I went in and started the year having a great preseason. Everything was going well. But after a few rounds, like I couldn't fend, I couldn't tackle. And I tried and tried and tried. My thought was, if I just play a couple good games, get a new contract, I'm on. Just didn't quite work out how I planned in my head. So at the end of the day, by about mid-season, I had to have double shoulder reconstruction. Had my double shoulder reco, and Stephen Dank, who supplied the peptides, he was at multiple other clubs, and he was at our club, employed by the club, doing everything from blood work to hypoxic altitude training to everything. So I ended up doing like a 4 to 6 week course of these peptides with a doctor, paid by the club, and never thought anything of it. I was like, yeah, I don't think it like changed my life, but I was like, yeah, cool. It was done by January, and everything was normal. Now Ivan Cleary came in as the new coach, and mate, when I say like I didn't do weights for 6 months, and I was big when I was younger. Like I ripped into the gym. I looked like a 12-year-old boy. So I was like, tried to get my way back. And then one day from like, mate, you couldn't written about it. One day I got this call from, he's a big prop. He played for Queensland in Canberra. Shillington. And he called me. He goes, mate, what are you doing at Penrith? How's things going? I'm like, not well. Like, I'm in and out. It's tough. I just kind of have lost that first impression and I'm just doing my best. He goes, mate, Fernsey wants to talk to you about possibly coming over mid-season. And then Fernsey calls me and I feel like I just needed someone, not even to give me anything, but just believe in me. And he did that. He said, mate, I'd love to get you over the club. I think you could do really well. And then basically a week later on the Wednesday, it was done. Gus let me go at Penrith and I drove up. I was living in this little motel in Canberra. And then by the Saturday that week, he goes, mate, I'm just going to put you in. And then, we were coming 13th at the time. I struck up a friendship with Blake Ferguson and we ended up going on this crazy run. We made the semi-finals. We scored 30 tries in 15 games. And I was like, bro, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And what do you put that down to? These are the moments where I look back in reflection, and this is something that I practice and try and get other people to practice. If I look back now, we've already named 2 significant ones. And we'll say that they're my major adversities, some of my most negative moments. But now after telling you what happened after those negative moments, how could I look back and perceive them as negative or bad moments? I went to Penrith, look what happened. Yes, the shoulder reconstruction, all the rest, but then I got my chance at Canberra and play my greatest football. So now, knowing that, like how much evidence do I need to know that next time this happens or I face some adversity, if I can overcome it, then look what's going to happen. And time after time this has happened. Like how many times does it need to happen? 3, 5, 10 before you believe it? So I believe it. And that's my mindset around anything that I have to face, challenge, risk, adversity.
So when Canberra then, you get suspended for 4 years.
Yeah. So that year was amazing. We come back, pre-season's going great. And then this one day I wake up and I'm looking at the news on TV and I'm like, holy shit. I know, it wasn't about me. It was Stephen Dank, and it was the darkest day in Australian sports and the Parliament. Yeah. And I was like, I know him.
Righty.
And I was like, no.
Did you at that time think this could lead to me, or
100%.
This could lead to rugby league? I was
like, oh yeah, but it was about rugby league.
Yep.
And I was like, well,
we'll see where this goes.
And of course, without any information or understanding and thinking that I hadn't done anything wrong.
Yep.
Like if we think about the little things that would give me that belief, like I checked it with ASADA. I went to a doctor. I was sorted by the club. I had multiple drug tests since then. So I'm like, I'm trying to disassociate myself from the situation. And slowly, month by month, a little bit more information comes out. Then my name comes out. And then by far the hardest thing, to your point, was not the suspension, was not being on the front page of the TV. It was the 8 months where and I'm a pretty personable guy, pretty like loud in a club, I'm always high energy.
Yeah.
And I had to pretend that everything was okay, that it wasn't about me, show up every day, put a mask on for 8 months and try and play good football. That was way harder. So by the time I got to that point where it all happened, it was actually a relief.
When you say that, right, let's dive into that. Let's dive into that headspace, right? Because I got no doubt there's half a footy squad going through that sort of head state of I'll just show up, but I'm going to pretend to be happy today because there's a whole lot of stuff happening internally, personal life, all those sorts of things. What did you do to cope?
Mate, I don't know what I did. I've obviously, part of the big reason that was helping me in that stage was I really wanted to try and disassociate myself from the situation. Like it was very blurred as to who's really involved? What's the evidence and facts? Who's going to go down for this? Is it the Manly players? Is it the AFL players? Is it the Sharks players? Is it Sandor? So for a long time, I was just trying to disassociate myself. But it was really hard. I connect back to those moments and like they were some of the toughest times. And it wasn't because of the scrutiny. It wasn't because what people had to say. It was, and this is arguably one of my greatest life lessons that I live through this lens now. Being my authentic self, I cherish that and protect that with everything nowadays. That feeling of not being your authentic self, being in an environment where you can't be that, being around people where you can't be that, is something that I never want to do again or put myself in a position. So, I mean, I just had to suck it up, really. I couldn't talk to anyone because I was trying to disassociate myself from the situation. I told my manager and my mum, and that's it. So I couldn't tell anyone else. I was actively trying to pretend like this wasn't about me.
Okay.
So, bro, it was hard, but I just had to cop it and try and get through it as best as I could.
You were saying you were struck up a good friendship with Fergie.
Yeah.
Did he pick up on anything? Did any of the boys pick up on anything, or were you that good at just sort of masking it?
Yeah, I am, and I think it's a double-edged sword for me. Like, I've always been good at creating these coping mechanisms, and maybe that comes from having such an individual and independent lifestyle from a young age. Like, and these coping mechanisms serve me. They allow me to be optimistic. They allow me not to move into depression and sadness, but they also probably neglect the true feelings and the things that I'm going through. But yeah, I think it's a skill set that I've acquired where I can be a bit of a chameleon and I can save face, but it's not something that I want to do now. I was forced into that situation, and I honestly protect that with my life. Like, whether it's the work that I do now in the group training space, like being vulnerable and allowing other people to be their authentic self without judgment, without the fear and worry of other people and what they think. Like, I thrive in those situations now, and that's probably because of my own personal experiences.
You know, you talk about like that experience in Canberra, but how many players actually got done from that whole thing? Because it seemed like there wasn't many people.
No, well,
Like, did you feel like you were singled out a bit?
Oh, look, at the time, it's a weird one because, yeah, like there's a lot of stuff that I know that I didn't say. And because I didn't say because, well, did I see it? No. So it's just hearsay, really.
Yeah.
But, you know, being independent and by myself, of course someone had to take the brunt of it. You know, if I was in one of the teams that got 2-3 weeks, great. And I'm glad that they didn't, because if you understand the story and the situation, it was facilitated by a person, by the club. So for the players to take the full brunt of it, even Essendon, they all missed a year. I think it's harsh. And as much as he was a madman and a mad scientist and pushing the boundaries, I truly don't think that he believed he was doing something untoward. And in reality, for this to come out 3 years later through text messages, it wasn't a banned substance. No one got tested. It's like, should the players cop the full brunt of that? No, but under the jurisdiction of ASADA, the performance or the coach or Stephen, he's not liable under ASADA. He's not an athlete. So at the end of the day, yeah, of course, was I a scapegoat for the situation? Yes. Did I lean on that? No. I knew that my best pathway forward, and I believe this is really what allowed me to move forward and change the public perception. What can I do? I accepted it. It is what it is. Like, I can't change it. These are things I'm not in control of. So I accepted it. I took ownership and responsibility, and then I moved forward. And I think the way I moved forward is admirable, and it created an opportunity, an underdog opportunity for me to come back and do something great. And I think people appreciate that. People can relate to that. So that was my thoughts. Like, this is how I'm going to handle this, and I think this is the right way. And ultimately, I think it was.
I remember it, and me personally, then and then gathering the information from there, I personally think you got thrown under the bus. That's my view with it. And I'm not there. I don't know all bits of information, but you can connect dots by reading certain things, listening to different opinions and all that sort of stuff. So, mate, like, just me saying that to you now, you're a strong man, bro.
Yeah,
but
I
think that,
if
you look at the season Ferguson and him were having,
bro,
scoring those tries, bro,
everywhere.
Like, it was like these guys are the entertainers.
It was,
and it was almost like, you know, Ricky with Stewart would always say that they always come after us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In Canberra. And I remember that year, and that they were like, you'd be watching them and then go, mate, these guys are entertaining.
Right, you know what, that year, and Jakey, I don't know if you have an example, but again, the life that I've lived now and experienced, like we spoke about, I've travelled, and rugby league's so insignificant.
Yeah,
in the reality of life, like that's
it is, and like to jump on what you just said, right? I had my moment, right? So at the end of 2017, big year for myself in regards to, I went through a real hard time. Like, I was taking prescription drugs to go to sleep during the day because I get up, do my extras, and I was sick of people asking me the same questions every day. Why aren't you playing? Why aren't this? Because I went from 2 full seasons to my first trial was coming off the bench in reserve grade. I didn't cope well because same thing, I'm off contract.
Yep.
I'm only 27. I've had 2 great seasons. What is this trying to teach me? And at that time, I just had what I knew. Threw myself into training, but also was dancing with the dark side.
Yeah.
When I went to Romania to go play rugby union, right, that was never for me for sport. It was for me to see how ungrateful I'd become. That's a harsh reality. And I come back, Christian Wolf gave me an opportunity at the Townsville Blackhawks. Same thing.
Yeah.
Wasn't necessarily about footy for me anymore. I got to go up there and see a different part of Australia, Indigenous culture. I started my profession as being a youth worker, and I sort of sat there, dude, just like you said, and I was like, footy means fuck all. It means something to you at one stage, but when you have your mind open and you get to see other people, young people struggling, adults who are doing their best, it actually humbled me, and I began to feel empathy for everything that was around me. And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
Because I had loved rugby league since I could watch it on TV, all the way to that moment where I was 27 and I got let go by the Dragons again, due to things that I'll openly talk about when it goes to where it's supposed to go. But I resonate with you, mate. And it is true. Your hardest times, you can keep sinking, and I've done that too, or you hit the bottom and you go bang. So it's cool, bro. I appreciate it.
But back to the tools that you spoke about, bro, like without the next phase that we're going to talk about is obviously being suspended. Without that happening, my identity is Sandor Earl, the football player. It's the only reason I've gotten attention. It's the only reason people give a shit. It's all I've ever done. Like these are the tools that I have. I identify, and my persona is Sandor Earl, the rugby league player. Now, would I have grown into maturity and understanding myself a little bit more? Yes. But when I was forced to navigate my own way in life, have nothing to do with football, I realised that football is something I do, not who I am. And that was a great lesson. But if we speak about football players trying to learn, how are you going to learn that lesson as a football player without the mentoring, without the impact, without something that's going to force you into that realisation? So that's a big thing as well.
Yeah. We were having this deep conversation. I won't go fully into it, but I was just explaining to the boys, like I've been in the fitness industry owning gyms for 27 years. And, I told the lads a few moments, in those years. And the self-reflection when you're in there, you're almost like, fuck, is this your life? You know what I mean? You're like, you're working, you're going, how the fuck am I going to get out of this? And in life, you're almost labelled with this thing. Sandor Earl, the football player, Jake, the Dragons player. It's almost like you're labelled and you're going, fuck, is this? I can't be labelled this. I've got to get outside this. And it's almost like you're wrestling with yourself.
Well, it's not who you are.
It's not who you are, but people perceive that as that's your label.
Yeah.
And then you're stuck in the system. And like, in my early years, I had the gym at Rockdale and it was Titan. And I was just locked in there. It was either me and my brother working on either end. And at points you're like, fuck, this is tough. Yeah. And this was before, I was telling Jake, this was before Fitness First, Anytime Fitness. And there was no playbook on how to run these businesses back then. And it becomes quite hard and daunting when you're trying to find a way out. Yeah. And you're absolutely struggling with this mental side of what you're going to do. And you're almost your own therapist at times because you've got these two voices going, yeah, you can do it. And there's other voices going, are you fucking kidding yourself? Yeah. And you're fighting back, to and fro from, talking to yourself. And what I see with rugby league players, like Tyron Smith, I think is an exception. And that's how we found your mum to help my daughter. But there's not enough of these individuals that really put their heart and soul on the line to help people in sport. Yeah. And it seems like they don't even have the playbook or the rule book because even those guys that are trying to help, they're sucked into this system and these managers that only know one way. Yeah. So whether they're, doing dodgy deals or whatever it is, and in all sports, you see, things done for the reasons of the actual team rather than the individual. Yeah. And you see a lot of players, turn to alcohol, turn to drugs, and all that kind of stuff to mask the issue that's at hand. And so what happens in the 4 years that you're off now? What's the identity of Sandor in those 4 years?
Yeah, so when I got suspended, I'd been there before. I went over to Thailand. I just wanted to get away. And I had a great experience there, just a travelling fitness holiday. Obviously, mixing it up with people from all different walks of life, people I would have never interacted with, maybe didn't even want to interact with, like not only from all walks of life, different levels of status, different opinions, different types of people. So it was an amazing experience, and I knew that that was this place I needed to go. I mean, the day I flew out, I was in the airport, it was very sketchy. I remember sitting down, you're next to me on the plane, and bang, he pulls out the Telegraph, and I'm on the front page, and then the middle spread. I was just like, fuck me. So I got out of there. It was the best thing I could have done. And to Jake's point on the whole situation, consuming the information from the media, there was an opportunity that came up, and my manager said, Channel 9 want to do an interview on the footy show. And I needed the money anyway, because I needed to pay for all these legal fees, fighting a battle that wasn't even real and didn't make sense. Like, knowing what I know now, it changed so many things, but I was just this kid. Yeah. So anyway, went back and did this interview. It was the best thing I could have done, because again, rather than getting your information from the Daily Telegraph, it came straight from the horse's mouth, and it was real, it was authentic. My mum was on it at some point, and it humanized the whole thing, and everyone went, oh, okay, well, hang on, this is a little bit different to just the headlines and the clickbait that I've been consuming. So I did that, and then this has been something that's carried into my adult life, and whether it's part of my conditioning from a young age and probably things that I've taken from mum, but then also my own life experience. Like, I've always had a poor relationship with money. Not done anything stupid, but I've made a lot of money, but I also have had very little money. And in some respects, it's taken probably till this year for me to make those changes. And in that moment, I had $15,000 left in my bank account from everything that I'd done till 23. And I was staying in a hotel called Anchan. It's like literally across the road from the pool.
That's where we stayed.
There you go. So that's the first hotel.
Yeah.
2 months in, I've always had this, I was always kind of like business savvy and like interested in these other things, a little bit entrepreneurial, but never had like a creative outlet, but I was always very interested. So I met this guy and I said, bro, I've got this idea for this like health food cafe. And he's like, let's do it. And all of a sudden I was just like, fuck it, let's do it. So the space outside, which is now a cafe, the Stormtroopers Cafe, the Unit 27 Cafe, I started that called Muscle Bar. And we did
Wait a second, so Troopers before
was the cafe that I sold to them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that's to Dana. You
Dana.
sold to Dana.
Yeah. Well, before that, it was two English guys, Rob and Dale. They owned Unit 27.
Okay.
So I went in there. We did the fit out. 15 grand and a little bit from him was really all we needed. Got it all done, and then I was just working in there every day. I was making smoothies, probably shouldn't have been, for 8 to 10 hours a day. But it was mad, and like it was super successful. Like you can make real money there. Obviously, the tax is very low. Everything's very easy. And I just, it gave me purpose. Business has always been this thing that has been very transferable from rugby league. It's competitive. You're working with people. And I bring a different level of standard and some good food, but I bring customer service. That's really it. And this cafe was killing it and thriving. And then I opened the gym across the road, which was Primal Fitness. I don't know if it's still Primal Fitness.
Primal.
Yeah,
so you opened that gym?
Yeah, and then I opened...
Can you believe all this, mate? Fuck me, Dan.
I opened Unit 27 with the guys.
Yeah.
And then I had one last cafe, which I think is closed now, called The Shack. That was just a little bit further down.
Yeah.
And then did all that.
You opened... How long's Unit 27 been there?
That's been there since when I got there, end of 2013.
Wow.
This is cool little history lesson, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really cool. Yeah. And then when end of 2014, I sold the cafe and the gym and then traveled the world. I went on a massive world travel and then ended up coming back to Thailand, opening that last cafe, and then before I went to Melbourne. But such a great experience. Like, I loved it there.
I just want to rewind a little bit. What was your mindset like, obviously, getting there? Staying at the Anchan, and how long did it take for you, if you weren't already out of it, to sort of begin to break that mold of rugby league player, Sandor the rugby league player, and just become Sandor the person in Thailand? It took
it probably a little bit of time, because initially all of the attention I still was being identified as this person that played rugby league, and there wasn't any judgment or stigma, but all of that was still attached to me. But I think it was my own personal journey where I was exposed to different people, and I think this does relate back to me at a younger age. I've always had, and I'm very grateful for this, a lot of self-awareness. So I pick up on things, I can reflect and understand why I'm doing things on the fly. So I'm grateful that I have that mindset and ability. And I think I just soon started to realize the value of being around good energy, good people, and people who just exposed me to different things. And I really appreciated it. And I started to understand that, and in that moment that like, yes, I need to understand and identify that like football is something that I've done. It's not who I am, but that's still an own personal journey that I had to do some work on.
Yes.
That just doesn't happen with that realization, you know, but it definitely set me on the right path. But a beautiful place. I'm very grateful. I probably took it for granted. Living on an island, 10 pieces of clothing, had a scooter, 3 beaches, 5 minutes in every direction. And it was like, just what a great time.
When did you start to find your feet over there? Like so we've gone when it broke down. When did you go, rightio, I'm taking this on now. This is my new identity or my new character.
I think pretty early on. Once I had that cafe, it was like super popular cafe. Obviously, I was working in Unit 27, which instantly became the most popular gym on the street. So I was so entrenched with everyone. You know, I was like one of the people who lived there. I knew everyone. So I think pretty early on, you know, within 3 to 6 months, that became my new life. And I guess, as you said, something that I identified with. But yeah, I didn't really have any fear. I just tried to get it done. I had no business experience, no understanding of anything. I'm a very practical learner. I still am. I'm not educated. I didn't finish high school. But if I want to know something, I will figure it out. And again, these are skill sets that come. This is why it's so underrated and undervalued. Again, we'll come to a point where what have I transitioned to after football? And I think a lot of people are in that dead space where they leave as a professional athlete. Like, what do they do? But who can be the person that says to them, well, let's break that down. Let's break down your asset. Like, I've got initiative. I'm competitive. I'm hardworking. Where did that come from? These are attributes that you've picked up because you made it to the fucking NRL. Like, you've got all the skill sets. You can do whatever the fuck you want. So when I channeled that energy into something that I wanted to do, I was thriving. And again, any business that I've had success with up until probably 2 years ago has all been customer service driven. The way I treat people, the way I do shit and get shit done. And that's it. And that takes no skill or talent. That's just fucking effort.
Yeah, fuck, I love that. So that's incredible.
It's good,
man.
yeah.
He took us on
I'm
a mad
actually,
journey.
dude, like I'm being serious. This
We
is
went to
fucking,
all those places.
Yeah, bro.
And I love how he just
Expresses it.
He
It's
just
good.
went, you know,
Straight
head
into
on and goes, mate, we're going to do this. We're going to get this done. I'm going to learn from this experience.
Yep.
You said, like, until 2 years ago, something happened, a business deal. What was that? And where are you at right now with business? Because I want to touch on your diet that I love: whole foods, carnivore, organic, grass-fed, grass-finished. I love all that. I advocate that. I eat that way. It's so important to have whole foods and what it does for you mentally, physically, and also helps you not just with your performance, but your energy as well. And food is medicine. But I'm going to get into that. But what happened 2 years ago? You said up until 2 years ago, there was a business. And
Well, more so, any business that I'd done up until that point was purely driven by my energy, my passion, and maybe my ability with people. That's all it ran on. Now it's taken, you know, I've been as a franchisor, I've been in the system for 4 years. Now I've started to learn the aptitude of business, financial literacy, and it's a very different game that I'm playing. It's not just based on energy and passion, because that can only get you so far in reality. Yeah. So that 2 year mark is just identifying that on my journey through business, I've finally got to the point where I have a skill set that's a lot broader and doesn't just rely on my energy, my passion, and my ability to relate to people.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, Air Locker.
Yeah.
That's your business right now, yeah?
That's what I'm involved in, yeah. So basically, when I was looking to transition at the end of 2020, I got a couple of other mates who now live in America. I owned an F45 in Melbourne during my playing days when I went to Melbourne, and they owned a heap of F45s in California. And that was my first experience when I came back from Thailand. So I sold everything up and opened this gym in Melbourne, which again was another great decision for me. It gave me so much purpose. Ran that gym. It was really successful. I worked in there flat stick for, you know, that Melbourne story is an interesting one as well. Like, I came back and opened this business. You know, I coached 6 classes a day, trained twice. It's very similar to that Canberra moment. For me to get my start with Craig Bellamy, I actually wrote him a letter. It wasn't through my manager. I actually wrote him a letter because I was just thought, like, he's not going to appreciate a bullshit call from my manager saying, like, oh, are you interested in Sandor? So I just wrote him a letter. hopefully I can find it one day, but it was just, this is who I am. This is what I've been through. Very honest. This is what I think I can bring to the club. And then, you know, he gave me a call about 5 days later. Like, Jake, imagine doing that. Like, after you've been suspended for 4 years, he gives you a call. Firstly, you'd be like, holy fuck, Craig Bellamy's calling me. And then he goes, mate, I'd love to meet you at the cafe. And I was like, I can't believe it.
I got a similar story, mate, to add to that too, like rugby league. So I got sacked 2012, end of 2012, 5 million off-field incidences, how many chances, you know, that was a life-defining moment. I had a $250,000 contract ripped up 2 years, so whatever that is, 125 each year or whatever. Working $16.50 at a pet food factory for the next 2 years at Redcliffe. You know, like, so I resonate with a lot of your stories. I was living on the Sunshine Coast. I actually lived with Josh Maguire first. He was playing at the Broncos. So I lived around the corner from my work. But then I moved home to the Sunshine Coast. So I was driving an hour and a half to work, start at 6, work all day, train 3 days a week, playing the weekend at Redcliffe, and then getting home at 8 that night. I was just in that thing. And then I'd always kept in contact with people at the Dragons. And like I began to realise I thought they didn't like me, but I was also I was screaming out for help for what I was going through. I had never, you know, faced any of my stuff. And when I realised people were still interacting with me, I was like, I'm just going to ask. And at the time there was a transitioning with the coach where Paul McGregor come in for Steve Price. And I had known Mary from, obviously my dad was mates with him. My dad used to play footy. And then when I wasn't in first grade in 2012, I was playing reserve grade, and that was with Mary, and I struck a player friendship with him, And I just reached out to him, same thing. I said, hey mate, can I just come see you? I just want to express myself and, you know, just be vulnerable pretty much, you know. And Wendell Sale actually put me onto it and gave me some advice as well. So you know, those little stories he said about Freddie, I had that with Wendell. And I sat down with Mary in the hotel foyer, and I just said, hey mate, like, I want to come back. I'll do whatever I need to do. Whatever it is you need me to do as an individual, I will do it. You know, I know I own everything I did. Can you help me? And he goes, leave it with me. 2 weeks later, I had a piece of paper sent to me, training trial. I got till Christmas to prove myself. Then I had till the first trial to prove myself. And then if they liked me, they kept me for that year. And he gave me a full-time contract before Christmas because I did what I said what I was going to do, which I hadn't really done in my life as a rugby league player. So those little moments, dude, like listening to him say it, I'm like, it's cool to hear other people have gone through those sort of vulnerable situations just to say, you know what, I've learnt my lesson. Now can you help me? Yeah. It's cool, eh?
And bro, he met me at the cafe. This is in the space of that, and half an hour in, he said to me, mate, I've got a contract for you. Yeah. Spoken to the powers that be. I was like, I thought I was just going to catch up with the bloke. Yeah. So, mate, what that instilled in me, it was insane. And of course, you know, whether you know the story or not. And bro, you'll understand this. I don't say this lightly. I rarely say this, but when I say, so I worked, obviously, as I said, for 7 months. I coached every class, but I trained twice a day. Not arrogantly, but when I came back to Melbourne Storm, I had never been fitter, faster, or stronger. It was a fucking joke. 3 weeks in, I tore my ACL. Wow. It's insane. That's the one. I don't care about the suspension. Rattle off anything in my life. I don't care. That is the one. Of course, I accept it, but like, I just can't understand. Yeah. I can't get over it. I'm over it, but it's like, how? You would.
Was that stepping? Was it taken off? Okay.
Stepping. Just stepping at training. Right, like pretty much last run of the last drill.
Shit.
It was insane.
I kind of remember that now you mention it because
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, so like you go back and obviously their system of training is like next level, right?
Yeah, but the first 2 weeks, bro, you train at 4:30 a.m, you go and do labouring till 3:30, and then you train on the field in the afternoon for 2 weeks. I was doing landscaping. Like, that's your first 2 weeks. It doesn't matter if you're an Australian player, if you're 30, if you're 18. Like, it was wild. I understand it though. Like, at the end of that 2 weeks, I was like, oh, fuck, I'm so grateful to be a football player, footy training. Yeah.
What did you learn there? Like, obviously, mate, you
everything.
Jumping
like,
at 45.
This is not, the Melbourne Storm is not something that I'm going to be talking about. And like, it was a great addition to my career. Like, I didn't have these mad football moments there. But what it has given me and set me up as a person, whether it be in my career, business, my own personal development, being exposed to that culture. It's the reason I wanted to go there. Yes, I wanted to see how good a player I could be, but I wanted to be exposed to it. We all know that there's something crazy and magical going on there, but the lessons that I've learned as a man, as a person, in business, as a leader, are things that will set me up for life and have completely changed my perspective. Like, people always want to know what the secret is there, but there is no secret. It's the very simplest of actions. When I went there, you know, they make everything simple. So, like, you've got up on the wall the 13 positions, and literally, like, imagine this. You go there, and the 3 things that they ask you to do is, like, catch the ball in the full, play the ball on your front, like, these little actions. And I'm sitting there going, are they serious? Like, I'm thinking, if I don't score a 90-metre try, I've had a shit game. That was my perception as a footy player at other clubs. And also, like back when we were at school, if you put your hand up or asked a question and you were the teacher's pet or you were trying too hard, that's what it was like at other clubs, bro. At other clubs, and I'm not saying it's like this now, but at other clubs, if I did extras, if I trained later, got up earlier, did extra video, mate, you're a fucking, you know, people are putting shit on you.
Yeah.
Well, so I was the odd one out. When you go to the Storm, if you're not doing that, you're the odd one out. I was like, oh my God, this is a dream. This is everything that I've dreamed of from a culture. And what they do is they do everything for you, but they only ask for one thing, which is effort. And when you feel so empowered because you're like, they've asked you to do the simplest things, you're going, I can do this. So this is the secret sauce that allows every player to feel empowered. They're accountable only to their effort, no skill or talent. And it breeds this culture of high standards. And being a part of that, it's the little things. It's the self-respect. It's the way that you treat people. It's the way that you speak to people. And it just completely changed my perspective on everything. And I'm so grateful I was exposed to that because it's shaped me as a man, as a leader, as a business owner. So, mate, worth its weight in gold. Football means nothing. It was just to be exposed to that and those people in that system has been life-changing.
Wow. Unbelievable. And it's those experiences where you learn so much
100%.
that lives with you forever. But, you know, what it seems like your self-awareness is at a, like talking to you, your self-awareness is at a different level. You know what I mean? And I think that might be from your upbringing, your mum, and the effort she put in there, but also the adversity that you had to go through to get to where you are. Have you always been into your nutrition? Like back when you were playing rugby league, were you always this guy where you go, mate, I've got to be hitting these numbers, you know, whether it's protein, fats, carbs, because you're in the Whole Foods, you eat like a carnivore, but obviously you have your dairy, your fruit, and all that kind of stuff. Were you doing that in rugby league?
Yeah,
to that level?
So my first exposure to this, which is hilarious, up until 16, my lunch was still Space Food sticks, Dunkaroos, peanut butter and jam sandwiches. You know, like, bro, that was my lunch as a 16-year-old playing sport, which is insanity. Yeah. So I tore my ACL at 17, and God bless my mum. I was like, I got all my homework sent in a post pack, and I was like, Mum, I'm not fucking doing this. Like, she's like, okay, you can have the year off school. You got to get a job. You got to train. So at that time, I was 69 kilos at 17. Did my ACL. Every day, there was a gym up the road. It was in Leichhardt, the top of the hill. I'd go up there, crutch up the hill. Started off with a PT. Had the standard, 6 exercise workout, 12, 10, 8, 6. Just went there every day. Mum got me to see a sports dietitian at the time. Susie Burrell was her name. And I started eating all this food. Like my breakfast was, 6 eggs, milk with milk powder in it, just baked beans and toast. And I was just eating, going to the gym, got a job. The next year I came back to SG Ball, I was 83 kilos and I was a completely different person. That was my first exposure to nutrition and the importance and the impact. And I was a different player. Now I was powerful, I was fast. I went to the Roosters trial they had at Henson Park for the SG Ball, and I'd come back from ACL in 6.5 months, even at that age. But I did the work, I did the rehab. And luckily, my first run, I scored a length of the field try, and he pulled me off. He said, oh, mate, you're sweet. But 69 to 83 kilos in 1 year is insanity. So that was my first exposure. And then you got to remember, I put a lot of weight into things like working hard, doing the extras, my nutrition, because I needed to. I wasn't, but I'm not lacking skill or talent, but I wasn't the most skilled or talented person. My edge, my advantage was the work that I was willing to do. And that was in all areas. So yeah, that translated all through my playing career. I was very interested, alternatively as well. I was looking at other things. the standard athlete diet has so many flaws, as you would know. It's quite sad, to be honest. And I know we have high energy demands, but I still think there's a better selection of food that can be offered to athletes. So the carnivore diet came about at my time in the Storm when we were, I was just always injured and inflammation. And I kind of had this realization of a thought, and I was like, you know what, maybe the most important thing is this shit that we put in our mouth every day. Like if you think about that, just that alone, think of all the medicines that we take, all the creams that we use, all the things that we do externally, the gym, everything else. How is anything more important than what you put in your mouth, which goes in your body? Arguably, there can't be anything more important. Like there can't be anything that has a bigger impact. So that's when I started the carnivore diet. I went and bought a Weber barbecue before we got locked down. And the lad at Bucock's Butcher in Sunny Coast, absolute legend, he'd bring me my meat every week. And I started the carnivore diet then, and then transitioned into something that's a little bit more sustainable that I believe is probably makes you more equipped for performance, which is just incorporating some of those things like selective carbs and other sources of food. So it's always been a part of my life. It's always been something that I've been interested in. But I also try and simplify it. I think there's a lot of fad diets. People too identify themselves with a diet, just like that, you know what I mean? So it's like, take away the bullshit. What if you just didn't eat something that was in a packet and had 30 ingredients?
You're just having whole foods.
That's what it is.
Essentially, you're having whole foods.
And you're prioritising protein a bit more. That's what it is. It doesn't need to
100%.
be a diet. It doesn't need to be some bullshit thing. It's like, it's really simple. Eat real food and maybe give a little bit of thought of what you eat and when you eat it. It's that simple.
And look, you see autoimmune issues, so many different types of autoimmune issues, gut issues and all that kind of stuff. Then you got these people, if it fits your macros, it works.
Yeah.
Like, man.
And I feel like we're just coming out of the flexible dieting era. I feel like we're just coming out of it.
It seems like we are, but it's still really, really apparent and still out there because everyone wants to take the easy way out.
Yeah, well, and also every influencer in the fitness space attach themselves to that. But slowly people are starting to, but it's a domino effect.
Yeah.
People are scared to attach themselves to whole foods and real food because, I'm going to be going left when everyone else is going right.
Can I jump in there? Because I'm not a big dot. Like I'm learning a lot
seen
from
what
him.
happened to your body.
Exactly right. And I go in and out because I have the ability to be an emotional leader, right? With what you just said then, how do you, because I obviously follow you on Instagram, right? And the way that you spoke the other week on the podcast, which we spoke about walking down here, that sort of information is just going to be key for everybody. How do you get people to want to buy into that though? Like, how do you, instead of, we can put it there, but it's getting people to be invited to actually want to try that sort of stuff because, you got to eat this sort of meat and this sort of fruit here, and it may throw people. Yeah. How do you encourage people to lean into that?
I would say, firstly, we've all been brought up on the same information. You can call it misinformation, bro science, myths and misconceptions. Like, there's so many things that slowly, because I've wanted and been curious and seek the information, that I've been like, well, and you're kind of at the point where you had to question everything. But now I've gotten to, the easiest way I think people can identify is through pain. The positive things aren't really our greatest motivator. So wanting to be healthy or wanting to be shredded, that'll get you so far. But do you have an autoimmune issue? Do you have a gut problem? Is it affecting your family and relationships? Whether you got low energy, low libido, is it affecting your work and your career? Let's identify something that is going to be an intrinsic motivator that is having a huge impact on your life, and then understand that food can actually be the solution to your problem. Let's start there, because that's going to be a pretty big inspiration. Identify those pain points, and then let's talk about how food can change that, because most of us are consuming processed foods or rubbish, or we've gone down the path where we're constantly on this yo-yo of flexible eating. Does it fit in my calories? Does it fit in my macros? And I'm not discrediting calories and macros. As you know, it's traditional science. It's important, especially if you want to be specific for a goal. But if you make the simple changes of eating more protein, prioritizing more animal protein in the form of meat, if you start off your day with a high protein, high fat breakfast, if you started to think about, well, what carbs am I eating? Are my carbs coming out of a packet, or are they coming from fruit and honey? So if you just made those small changes, which no one could sit there and say that's really difficult, because what are you missing out on? You tell me how you feel. What if I said try it for a week? What if I said try it for 30 days? Again, we're not talking about something that's overly hard. If the pain that you're trying to resolve, the very simple changes that you have to make, and putting a time cap on it or a goal of 7, 14, 30 days. You do that, and then you tell me whether it's something that you want to make a part of your lifestyle.
And you live it, you know. So it's great to see you do that. I'm a walking example of it. So before I went to Thailand with the retreat that we were a part of, right? I was like, I'm sticking to whatever Met says, non-negotiable. Training wise, where he goes, I go. Food wise, so we were at these beautiful spots, the garden, eating this beautiful meat, troopers. It was unbelievable. And by the we were doing double day trainings and just stuck to the food. By the end of the week, I hadn't seen my abs since I stopped playing footy. And I took my shirt off and I looked at myself in the mirror and I could see him. And the lighting helped, obviously. I'm not going to give it too much of a rad. You know, so I'm standing there doing that. And I thought to myself, and I'm like, this fucking works. You know, because I push back on things that sometimes I don't understand, but then I like to ask the questions to understand it. And the thing was, when I was there, I started to notice, I'm like, I need to buy into this more. You know, and as you said, whatever we put in our mouths is what we turn into. And I've, you know, as I said before, I have the ability to swing with certain foods and stuff like that due to emotionally eating. But my discipline's been very strong with it. And to actually live like that now and begin to dive into more seriousness, I suppose, with your diet, it's extremely beneficial. Mind and body connection and just confidence as well as a person, dude.
But even how inquisitive you were, you know, like we were getting the bloods done. You've seen my bloods, you've seen where I was at, you've seen where my free testosterone was at. And you were starting to understand that when you delve into those metrics and those numbers, you can start to live a life like I'm turning 48 this week. You can start to live a life as you get older, you can continue to improve. And when you can continue to improve and then be able to stick it with the younger people, the 20-year-olds, and still be relevant, not only does your confidence grow as you get older, whether it be in business, whether it be in relationships, whether it be, the better you feel and the better you look, you can go into meetings more confident. And that was the biggest thing. Your mate came in yesterday from the boys from the Dragons. They go, fuck, Jake, you look different. You know, they identified it straight away. And that starts to give you the belief and the confidence. Like for me, man, you know, before I started eating that way, I had tendonitis in my forearms for like 13 years. I haven't had any of that pain come back, and I'm always bewildered that it's not there. It's different with Murad, he's 58 and has been training for a long time, but I can tell you this, my brother was getting heaps of treatments for his back. He was gone. He couldn't move. And then he went like to a different level. He said, if the fruit's not in season, I'm not going to eat it. And he really went full carnivore. And mate, you didn't see Murad before this. You know, he had H. pylori and he got it in 2014, I think, in Fiji. That almost changed everything for him. It was, you know, I think he had raw oysters from some restaurant overseas in Fiji. But once he got that gut issue, he was given all the antibiotics in the world, and mate, he was dying. I never forget sitting with him. I go, bro, yeah, okay. His confidence was gone. It was totally diminished. And you've seen how lean Murad is. But he had to figure out, man, I've got this condition now. If I don't do something about it, it's going to fuck him. And it really, really did. It took him down that road. And you could see my older brother, who's 59, and he was just jumping into the lifestyle. And he doesn't train. And once you lean into it, and you start to eat that way, it starts to change everything. I'm not saying everyone's issue's the same. Like my brother's gut issue is like, that's never going to go away. And the antibiotics almost killed him. You know, and that's what the best way to lean into it is, if you got that pain, do you want to keep living with that pain?
And I think it's about changing people's perception. I've spent best part of 10 years working with what we'll call the general population. They're not an athlete. They haven't had the same journey of us. That's not taking anything away from them, but they haven't had the exposure. Their perception of optimal health is just being pain-free. Right? That's bullshit. What do your bloods say? How do you look? What's your muscle mass? What's your training routine? How's your energy? Like, all of these things need to be normalized. Right now, the standards are so low. Like, I can't tell you how many people I interact with, as an example, And if they have a pain or an injury that they want to sort out, they go straight to the GP. You know, it's like, in what world? I would never do that. And then get an ultrasound and then be put on pain medication and tell them they can't train for 4 weeks. You know what I mean? Like, this is the exposure. So my style has always been, I know this really inspired me in my early days, the things that I've been exposed to as a professional athlete, I just tried to treat all the general population like that. Why should they not have the same encouragement, the same education, and be inspired to do the same things? So I think the more that we can normalize all these things that we're talking about and elevate the status of them to be perceived as something that everyone should be doing, that's when we're going to see significant change. But there's such a disparity between the conversations we're having and the conversation your average Joe who hasn't had the exposure is having, and their education, say, coming from the GP, or you know, they don't have too much nutritional advice. They don't understand and believe in the power of shifting your lifestyle and having a training routine and being around good people. And like, the more that people like ourselves can use these platforms and any platform to impact other people in that way, like, that's a fucking great movement.
And isn't it good that stupid law of misinformation got kicked out? But it's unfortunate the under 16s will go ahead next year. And you know, we can delve into that. I'm sure we're going to have more conversations on this podcast where, and it's the misinformation about food.
Yeah.
And it's these huge, you know, drug companies and food companies that are ruining it, and they've still got the power over the media that's affecting society in itself. Because if you look at mental health, you know, there's a big portion of mental health that is derived from the foods that we eat. And, you know, we talk about the rugby league culture being bad. The culture of society, like, look at the East, man. It's riddled, especially this time of the year. Everyone's going to fuck up. I say to the whole team, okay, you guys are just going to fuck up because it's that time of the year and everything's in front of you and it's going to challenge you. And you're going to start to question yourself and you're not going to know where the fuck you are. And until you start to understand that all these things are around you as a challenge to go yes or no. And the more times you say no, the better your summer's going to be. You know, whether it be alcohol, like people calling you, hey, let's go for a drink tonight. It's Friday afternoon, bro. We're in here. We're having this great conversation. You know, we're talking about nutrition. We're talking about overcoming obstacles, challenges. Same with you. And like, if you look at, you know, our week and our day, and since we come back from, you know, Thailand, it's been about how can we improve? How can we plan for next year better? How can we make every interaction that we have with different individuals and create an impact? But back to what you said, man, I just know how to serve people. I can get in, you know, the wrestling match, and I know how I'm going to make that person feel. But you show that too through how you eat and how you live. But, you know, I've never spoken to you before, Shandon. I'm impressed, man.
Oh, thank you, brother. Likewise. I appreciate the perspective that you have. And one thing that you said there is serving people. I know you guys will be interested on this, and I know you touched on it before, but one thing that comes to mind is I did, when was this? This was probably 2 years ago. I went on a retreat and I had a full-blown DMT experience. Full-on DMT though. So I was like the from the toad. And it was really cool. I'm very open-minded in this space and understand the power of things like psychedelics and other things that are going to open our mind. This isn't a recreational conversation. It's something that is based on personal development and just connecting with ourselves. And when I did this, I didn't really have expectations, but I probably did in some respects, just to like tackle the broad word of ego. Went into it, and I think deep down, maybe you could say that all these things were signs, like all the things that I've gone through my footy career. But I think deep down, in that moment, what I learnt was it's a very powerful experience. So coming out of that, I was in like, it was automatic. Like I wasn't conscious, but I was saying these things. And I came out and said, I am a vessel for a higher purpose and to serve other people. And that was unconscious. I just sort of said it. And that was the moment where I kind of released and went, you know what, I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to do something selfishly, not as a negative connotation, but selfishly for myself. I got to live out my dream as being a football player. But I know, and I've always known, that I've been put on this earth to not have my own personal success. It's to serve other people and to impact other people. And how do I know that? Like, I know I've got a big personality. I know I look a certain way, and those assets allow me to, in a room filled with all different types of people, and I think that's why I'm so connected to the space that I'm in. But my gift and what I'm supposed to do and my calling is to impact and empower other people, and that was the real kick off the cliff. Was what I needed to be like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And it's a hard thing to overcome because we're in this life to fulfill our potential and be successful. And I'll share something with you in a little bit about that topic in particular. But yeah, it was a very powerful moment and something that I knew, but I just needed that nudge.
What I want to ask you, what was your two parts? What led you to want to do that or get drawn to do that? And if you could share your intention behind it.
Yeah, I think just exploration. Again, probably the catalyst being that Thailand journey, this self-exploration, wanting to understand myself. I'd done a few other cool things. I'd done hypnosis before, which was really powerful. Hypnosis not the like click your fingers and you're a chicken, more so like a visualization, just for those people listening.
I've done that before.
But that was very powerful.
Yeah.
That was my first exposure to, again, unconscious and subconscious thoughts about like our traumas at a young age, and like not to identify traumas as anything crazy that happened, but just our experiences.
Yep.
So I started to become inquisitive, and then my best mate who set up the opportunity, I was like, anything that's going to push me and challenge me to explore a little bit deeper and find out about myself. And I think my intention was that ego topic and conversation. Again, ego is not something that is negative. We need ego. Ego drives us. But how you utilize ego is very important.
That's exactly right. The ego has a bad rap. It's actually designed to protect us.
Yeah.
Right? What integration did you have after it? Like, how long did that take? And did you? What lens is there now compared to before?
How long ago was it as well? How long ago?
Yeah, that was funnily enough, that was probably about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it just changed my perspective with the path that I'm on. It almost was a release. It was a weight off my shoulders because the expectations and pressures that I placed on myself to be successful, whatever that is, because it's only my opinion of whatever I believe success is. And it allowed me to anchor in and settle into the fact that I'm doing something that has a greater impact, not just for my own personal gain. And I think that was an internal battle that I was fighting through. And when that experience sort of gave me the insight and allowed me to just lean into it, I was like, now I'm at peace, now I'm comfortable, and now I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So it's less about me and more about the impact, and also just sitting back and just maybe appreciating something that you've done rather than fucking thinking about the next thing, and being grateful. And grateful's a word that probably gets thrown around.
Yep.
And it's a practice because by default, our mind will always go to the negative thing, the thing that we haven't done, the thing that we haven't achieved. And when you're a little bit more appreciative, like I'll appreciate anything. I'll appreciate the weather. I'll fucking appreciate coming here and doing the podcast with you, being around good people. Like I genuinely am grateful for that. And it just changes your whole life because you start to see the beauty in all of the moments that you experience. And I mean, it seems like a fluffy concept to maybe some, but when you see through this lens, your experience of life just changes, and it's a beautiful thing to experience.
I don't think it's fluffy at all. One of my mission is making people feel better than they've ever felt every time they walk through our club. So we talk about that mantra as many times as possible. Sometimes I forget to come in here and talk about that, but I don't think it's fluffy at all. I think that's our true calling. Yeah. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Like I can see and feel it in both of you. That's what you guys have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like bringing that to the surface and having these great conversations, you know, because there's a calling that's within us. Yeah. And I can feel it between both of you boys. There's a calling within us. And sometimes it's just there and you got to grab it out. And sometimes you have to have a experience like DMT. And we were talking about the ayahuasca that Rafa's done 53 times. I said, Raf, 53. He goes, bro, every single time there's something new. And you just go into a meeting and there's no puzzles. It's just bang, it's done.
I'm really starting to lean into understanding our subconscious and our programming, right? Like if you think about, I heard a beautiful analogy the other day. If we think about ourselves as a computer, like a computer has hardware that doesn't change. I'm talking about a raw, fresh computer you buy off the shelf. But all of a sudden I plug my USB in, I download an app. All of these things start to contribute to who we are. And that conditioning or programming, these are things that are built through experiences that we had no control of. I wasn't in control of my environment, the information I consumed, the people around me from my early years to my teenage years. So that is who I am, but I had no control over it. So as I break into my 20s, I lose myself to find myself. I start to understand these things. And now at the ripe old age of 35, I'm starting to identify I'm not making excuses and associating these things with who I am, but I'm saying, here's a link to maybe a frustration or a reaction or an action that keeps showing up in my life. Here's something that could have contributed to that. Now I understand it. It doesn't solve it. It doesn't fix it, but now I'm in control. And I can put a gap between my thoughts and my action. And the more that we can understand those things, the more control we have and the more ability we have to control our subconscious, because those things, it is a strange concept, the fact that we have all of these thoughts, all of these behaviors, all of these habits, and they're not stuff that we can think about and they're not tangible. But if you leave them unresolved, they are in control of you. And it's a simple process and practice, but the more that you lean into that, and that's something that a journey that everyone needs to go on, the more understanding you have, the more power that you have. So
100%.
it's really important.
They say 0 to 5 years old.
Yeah.
That's our downloading years.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a child born into chaos, neglect, no tools to be able to use the bathroom properly, all these things. If you're not aware or have self-awareness or haven't been taught, and you don't take the accountability to want to learn things, and I know this because I lived it, and I still live it now. We're always learning.
Yeah.
And I can use alcohol as an example. When I drank, that's because I thought, hey, I need that to be able to express, because I was a shell, bro. I had footy and I had piss. The truth of the story, I can acknowledge that.
Yeah.
When I gave alcohol away, right, it was because I had drank from 14 to almost 32. And I had some really good times with the alcohol, but what are good times?
Yeah.
And I had some very, very dark moments with alcohol. Yeah. And it got to a point where something happened and I thought, something just went bang in my brain and goes, it's fucking you, bro. It's not alcohol. You're using alcohol as an excuse. My subconscious mind was going, we need that. Let's go get it, and then I can function a bit better. We attempt to make ourselves feel better through food or through something that's just there for us to be able to do. And a lot of us do. We just go to the easy option. It's so easy. I always talk about this, like just to myself. I could go to the pub now. I could go find a bag. You find whatever you're looking
Especially
for.
in this area.
Yeah, you can find whatever you're looking for. So when something happens, look back to when you started looking for it. And it can be anything. It can be cash. It can be knowledge. It's whatever you want. But then, the last 2 days, I've learned something about myself from being in Thailand, from Metz and his partner, right? And I'm processing that now, and I'll take probably a couple of days too, because I want to write some things down. But that's the experience. I don't decline it anymore. Before it was, that's a bit too much. I'm a footy player. I've got to go to the pub and be seen.
Yeah.
That's mental health. I feel now. Like that was my mechanism. Need to go do that because I can't sit still. Whereas now, put Gabor Mate on, put a podcast on, then I start thinking about things, and then I'm like, okay, here's an opportunity to break myself down. Let's do that today. Yeah. So it's powerful, dude. The subconscious mind.
It's a great space to be in.
Yeah,
and that's simply all that you want to encourage people to get to, is just building awareness, maybe identifying their actions, things that have gone wrong, things that they're doing. And rather than looking around for excuses or pointing fingers, just focus on you, because that's all you can control. And think about, why did I do this? Why did I feel like this? Brother, we've got all the answers. And just those questions allow you to tap into what was the subconscious reason for why you did these things, why you reacted this way. And once you start to break those things down and you have this awareness, it completely changes your perspective. And if everyone was just on that journey, coupled with a few other shifts in mindset, we'd be in a far better place.
Man, it's a humbling experience because you want to deny it at the start.
Yeah.
It's not me. I only did this. Yeah, you only did that.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Powerful, bro.
Well, this was unbelievable.
Yeah. I love
I'm going to walk
podcasting.
away. There's a lot of great downloads.
Yeah.
I'm starting to question myself right now. Thanks a lot, boys. That was unbelievable.
Unreal chat.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
boys.
Thanks.